WashingTECH.
A lot of people are actually oblivious to the fact that their data is being collected in so many ways. And not only is it being collected, it's being used and shared for many purposes that we're not aware of.
Are you worried about your kids' safety on the internet? We are here to help. WashingTECH's 5-step checklist will take you through the process of protecting your kids, and will give you tips on how to set up the best parental controls for your children on their devices. You want what's best for your children. They deserve to be safe online. Our step-by-step guide will help you make sure they are. Download WashingTECH's online safety checklist today to protect your kids online. Find it at protectyourkids.online. That's protectyourkids.online.
Welcome to the Tech Policy Leaders Podcast.
The world's most influential voices keeping you safe and informed online.
Streaming from Washington, D.C., America's tech law and policy epicenter. These are your leaders. This is the podcast.
Tech Policy Leaders with Joe Miller, founder and CEO of WashingTECH.
WashingTECH, safe and informed since 2014.
My guest today is Fatou Sankare with origins from the Gambia. Fatou Sankare is a doctoral student in cybersecurity at Marymount University. She graduated Summa Cum Laude with a Bachelor of Arts in political science from Howard. She continued her education at Fordham, where she received her Master's of Science in Cybersecurity. Her research area of focus is on privacy, with an emphasis on policy and data in cybersecurity. Fatou is the founder of Datacation LLC, data scientist at a consulting firm, and an assistant professor. Fatou Sankare. Fatou, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your work and what brought you to the field of data security. What was kind of that aha moment for you to sort of take an interest in this work?
Yeah. So I have a background in political science. I went to Howard University where I studied political science and Arabic. I had an internship with the federal government where I was interested in cybersecurity. So I decided to get a master's degree in cybersecurity, where I focused primarily on the policy aspect of cybersecurity. And now I'm currently doing my doctorate where I'm looking at the Fourth Amendment and the use of digital evidence in law enforcement investigations.
So give us some background on this. What are some of the things folks need to be concerned about when it comes to data security and privacy? What trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is that a lot of people are actually oblivious to the fact that their data is being collected in so many ways. And not only is it being collected, it's being used and shared for many purposes that we're not aware of. So people put out information in hopes to either have their social media followings up there or be in contact with their families and their friends, but then their data is used for other purposes that they're not aware of.
And what are some of those purposes that you're seeing? I mean, I know there's a lot. You know, I'm asking the question like I don't know already. But what are some nuances that you're seeing when it comes to this?
Well, right now I'm seeing it being used for marketing purposes. So from a business perspective, of course, if you're a business owner, you would like to use the data of your customers or potential customers to actually be able to market certain things. But then on the other hand, it's also used by law enforcement agencies and governments just to kind of get an idea of what people are up to, but not for fun, obviously for investigative purposes, but sometimes you wouldn't even know that you're under investigation because your data is being used without your permission.
So now what do you think is the reason why so many folks seem to put their online security at risk without really thinking twice about it?
I think for the most part, like online has been, or like social media. I think social media has been like the biggest piece of this all, the middle man in all of this. And in order for us to actually communicate with family members, like just think about the amount of people that you're connected with on social medias, right? If you have any, LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you use, right? How many people you are actually connected with, where if you look at your phone contacts, you're like, I don't actually have their phone number or their email address. There would be no other way for me to reach them unless I have them on social media. So I think for the most part, people also use social media as a marketing tool for themselves or for their business. So they'll put information out there, you know, in hopes to either gain a following or be able to sell a certain product. And what they're not aware of is that data goes a long way and it leads to a digital footprint that stays with you forever, even if you delete the page or the content or just decide that one day I don't want to have social media anymore. That data is still out there.
So what are some technical solutions? I know you have the technical expertise as well as a computer scientist. What are some of those technical solutions that people can start taking right away to protect themselves online?
Yeah, of course. Honestly, I think people wouldn't want to hear my first solution, but the first thing is to make sure that they're reading privacy policies and reading terms and conditions. I think a lot of the use of our data is actually in those privacy policies, but because they're super long and sometimes we actually don't want to read them because of the wording, it's not easy to read. It's not easy to read because I've actually sat through and read privacy policies and it was like, what does this mean? So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is really just Google yourself, right? See what's out there. Do a open source investigation on yourself, right? If a stranger was to Google you, what would they find? So try to find out what information is out there about you. And a lot of companies are actually willing to take down information about individuals if you actually reach out to them, because that's your right. That is your data. You have the right over your data. So once you reach out and tell them like, hey, please take this down, they should and will be able to. Another thing is a lot of people I know, especially during COVID, a lot of people have actually started their own businesses and registered their businesses to states. You want to actually Google the business name as well because it's associated with you. And you want to make sure that if there is an address that you're using, maybe a home address, you want to make sure that that's also taken down and only the city and the state is showing and not your actual full home address.
Kids' safety on the internet? We're here to help. WashingTECH's 5-step checklist will take you through the process of protecting your kids, and will give you tips on how to set up the best parental controls for your children on their devices. You want what's best for your children. They deserve to be safe online. Our step-by-step guide will help you make sure they are. Download WashingTECH's online safety checklist today to protect your kids online. Find it at protectyourkids.online. That's protectyourkids.online.
Tech policy is global policy. This is the WashingTECH Tech Policy Podcast, serving the world.
So let's turn to law enforcement. What are you seeing when it comes to law enforcement in our communities? How are the police using data in a way that affects civil rights?
They're utilizing data in a lot of ways that we haven't seen before, because we are actually increasing our use of social media. They are actually also increasing their use of social media when it comes to investigations, because all the information is there, right? So the things that we're not seeing or we're looking for online, they can also see, and it makes it easier for them. There was actually a study done by the Urban Institute and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, that's IACP, and they were basically researching their use of social media and basically said that it became an increasingly popular tool for for law enforcement agencies to use. And they said basically that 91% of the time when they're utilizing social media is basically to just inform the public of what's going on, like public safety concerns. 89% is community outreach. 72% is just monitoring public sentiment based on what's going on and what real-time events is happening right now. 70% is actually for intelligence gathering for investigations. So imagine that, like, they're not going out anymore. They're not physically looking for people. Everything is just, they're basically remotely investigating things now because they can just sit from the comfort of their office or, whatever the case may be, and just utilize that data that they're seeing online, whether it be social media or just Google searches in general, and are able to see that. And we can also see that today with just crimes that have been happening. A lot of the ways that they're solving those crimes are based on a picture that someone either posted on social media or a video, and being able to actually link that person to a crime. So in a way, you can say that it's a tool that's useful for social media, but for law enforcement agencies, but for people who utilize social media, they may be a little worried with, how accurate is this information, right? Especially if they're utilizing tools like facial recognition and comparing that to social media data, because a lot of people don't actually know that they're in a virtual lineup that they don't know about.
That's crazy. So how do we shut down the internet and go back to the way things were before?
I think we're in too deep.
It would be nice, right? So what do you recommend? I mean, that obviously implicates the Fourth Amendment. If you've done some work here that I've seen, how would you rewrite the Fourth Amendment, hypothetically, if you could? What can we do? And if we can't rewrite it, what would you recommend doing in the absence of actually having to go through that whole amendment process?
Ultimately, we know that the goal of the Fourth Amendment is to protect the people's rights and privacy and freedoms from unreasonable intrusions by the government. But then there are times where they may have a warrant.
Right. And in rare cases these days, they actually have a warrant.
Right. So I think rewriting the Fourth Amendment is doable, but there will have to be a lot of conversation on what the definition of privacy is, right? Because when the Fourth Amendment was embedded into the Constitution, the definition of privacy then is way different from the definition of privacy now, because we have tools like social media, and the use of technology is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Everybody has it, right? So I think those are things that we have to consider when we're talking about adding amendments to the Fourth Amendment. But I think one of the things that we should focus on is start by passing federal data policy laws. Right now, a lot of people do know about HIPAA, which is industry specific, right? So that's for the medical industry. We have data policies for the financial industry, but there is none for the average human, right? So it seems like institutions are protected, and those are protecting the people rather than people just being protected without an actual institution. So I think starting by passing some federal data policies right now, I think California has them, in Illinois, but as a country as a whole, we don't actually have any federal data policies. So for example, with Texas, Instagram filters were not allowed. Instagram actually had to update their policy to allow you to turn on the filter feature. So that's a thing now on Instagram. You actually have to go in your settings and turn on the filter feature, because of the fact that they were actually utilizing the biometrics of your face when you have that filter on and selling that data. And that's like somebody selling your fingerprint, right? Because your face can unlock your phone now. So that's biometric data that they can utilize for God knows what.
That's crazy. I wanted to go back to the way it was before.
Yeah. So I would definitely say, having a federal requirement for biometric collection. So in order to collect like biometrics for business purposes, there needs to be like a federal standard and reasoning for the collection to include like what, how, why, and when. And then of course the definition of business purposes needs to be defined in the policy as well. Adapting federal policies such as like the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, I think that would also be amazing if we were actually able to see what the European Union was doing with their data protection laws and seeing how we can actually adapt that to the US. And then, of course, social media policies just kind of being more straightforward and straight to the point. I don't think a social media policy should be 5 pages long and hard to read. There should be a way to actually read the policy without even kids as young as 13 who are utilizing social media should be able to actually read and understand it, rather than like adults like us who don't read it at all, even though we should. When kids see that and, they're 13, 14, 15, utilizing social media like TikTok and Instagram, and we know that they're using those social medias, there should be language in there where they're actually able to read it and are able to opt out, because, no matter the age, I think everybody should have a right to their data.
Yeah, or make it like a 15-second short, turn the privacy policy into,
a video, a reel.
I try to, trying to get these kids to read is like pulling teeth, but I guess it was when we were kids too. So whatever. So what are some final ideas you'd like to leave with us before we close the Fatou, and where can we find you online?
Yeah, of course. So I would just say, be careful what you post online, whether you're frustrated, happy, excited. Do not post anything that you do not want to see in 10 years or whenever you decide that you don't want to see it anymore, because that information, although you delete a post or you delete a video, whatever the case it may be, it will always be up there. You can find me on social media. I do have Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram is The Data Enthusiast. That's THEE, Data Enthusiast. And then my Twitter is _Data Enthusiast.
Fatou Sankare is a technologist and a PhD candidate at Marymount University, where her research focuses on privacy and cybersecurity policy. Fatou, thanks for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
WashingTECH.